Hi guys, Noelplum 99 here, responding to Bossman 103, while simultaneously actually looking a little bit like Jacob off Lost, I'm sure you'll agree, with the kind of blonde and white look. Okay, let me play you a clip of Bossman. He's asked 3 questions. The first question's the one that I'm going to major on. The second 2 questions I'm going to condense into a single question. But first let's hear Bossman with the first question. Hello everybody, Bossman 103 here from Manchester. Okay, I've got 3 questions here for Noelplum 99, so let me read you the first question. Bugger, it's too blurry in here, I can't read the fucking paper. Oh well, I'll send you the questions, Noelplum, and you can read them out yourself. Okay, no problem, Gary. I'll read the question out for you. This is Gary's first question. It's a cracking question. Just that before I read it out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question out, then I'm going to give a reply. And Gary, I've got a question back for you. An equally good question. Let's just set the scene first, because this was based on a video that I made and an accusation that I leveled to a lot of Christians, which is that when they look at bad things in the world, they don't say, well, these bad things are evidence that God's bad. What they say is there must be things that we don't know about, that we don't understand, although on the face of it they may look like bad things to us. To God, you know, unfathomably they must be good things, okay? And yet when they look at good things, these same Christians, they just take it at face value. They never make the same leap and say, well, they seem good things to us, but to God these might be terrible acts that he's committing. Okay, so that was the basis that we're working from, and this was Gary's question. Do you think it is proper that we judge God by human standards rather than, I infer, by God's standards, in terms of right and wrong, good and evil, because he is so far beyond our petty little minds? Now, I understand the argument you're making here, Gary, that we shouldn't judge God by our standards, that we should apply his standards. But the problem is we don't know what his standards are. And if we don't know what his standards are, then surely the best thing that we can do, the only thing that we can do, is to apply our standards and hope and presume that they apply to him. I mean, if they don't apply to him, and we don't know what his standards are, well then terms like benevolence are meaningless anyway, aren't they? Because we don't know what it means in terms of God. So it just renders the whole thing meaningless. But you know, the interesting thing about making these kinds of videos that I've made is that I don't get to make them just from my perspective. That's what I like about making them, is that I get to make them from the perspective of somebody else. And it's often from a sort of slightly Christian perspective. I take some aspects of the Christian perspective and then see how it pans out. So this is the interesting thing. What is the Christian perspective, Gary? I can see the criticism you're making here, and there is some justification to it, but this is exactly what Christians do. They judge God by human standards. They say, a building's just collapsed and a child miraculously has been trapped in a little pocket of the rubble and they've managed to be saved 2 days later. It's a miracle. This is a good thing. This is a lovely thing. This is a wondrous thing. And this is good for us. This is good from our perspective, and it must also be good from God's perspective. And this must be evidence God saved this child. This is evidence of God's benevolence. So isn't this Christians doing exactly the same thing? If you don't want to judge God from our perspective, then you can't judge God at all, because you don't know what his perspective is. So my response to you is that it isn't ideal, but it's the best that we can do. Now, I said I was going to have a question back to you, and this is the question back to you. It's a good one. When we do know the perspective of something else, I would suggest to you that the rules change. Take the example of dogs. How would I judge a dog? Well, dogs are very different to God. I know a lot about how dogs work. I know dogs' evolutionary past. I know how dogs behave, and I know why dogs behave the way they do behave. They come from a pack background, and that's the kind of way that they act, like a member of a pack. That is their expectation. You as their owner need to be the leader of the pack, and we realise what dogs are about, and we cut them some slack, don't we? We judge dogs as dogs. We don't judge dogs as humans, and if we do judge dogs as humans, they're always going to fall short. So we have that extra knowledge of dogs, and so we judge dogs as dogs. But as dogs are to humans, humans are to God. God knows what our morality is. Well, he should do if he gave us it. So why surely God should judge us according to our morality, not according to his morality. And yet what happens? What do Christians tell me? Christians tell me that when I die, God's going to judge me. And he's not going to judge me according to my standards. No, he's going to judge me according to his standards, his super exacting standards that I haven't a prayer of living up to. In fact, it's so bad that I'm going to suffer torment unless I ask his son for salvation. So this is the question to you, Gary. Why is God judging me according to his standards? He can't have the excuse that I had when I talk about us judging him. No, he's in the same boat as when we judge dogs. He knows what our standards are. He knows what we're capable of. He knows our limitations because he fucking gave us those limitations. So why is he judging us according to his standards? How can that be right? How can that be fair according to your own argument? That's my question for you, Gary. Right, I want to move on to the second question now and the third question because they were quite similar. So I want to kind of condense them into one question, if I may. Okay, first off, question 2. If God was not benevolent, wouldn't he interfere with our lives all the time? And question 3 was similar. It started off the same, that if God was not benevolent, wouldn't he force you to love him and make you follow him if that's what he desired you to do? Well, the first problem I have with these questions, Gary, is that you're just doing what you said that we shouldn't do, or what you inferred that we shouldn't do. You inferred that we shouldn't judge God according to our standards, and yet what you seem to be doing here is saying, well, what would we do if we was God? Well, why wouldn't God do the same? Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, look, let's just accept that God's unfathomable and we can't work him out, and then say, well, surely we can work God out, and when we work him out, this doesn't seem to be how he's actually working, how he's actually functioning. The interesting thing is, according to the rules as I'm led to believe by Christians, that unless you accept God, unless you believe in God, unless you worship God, unless you ask him for salvation, that you're going to go to hell. Hell might be really, really bad, or it might just be a bit bad, but it's not as good as heaven. Now, what you're saying is, if God was not benevolent, wouldn't he interfere with our lives all the time? And wouldn't he force us to love him and follow him? But surely if he did either of those things, if he made it apparent that he existed by interfering in our lives, or if he forced us to love and follow him, then certainly, as it stands, the vast majority of people in the world are going to be destined to go to hell. But if he did these things, the vast majority of people in the world would say, well, fuck me, the Christian God does exist. And well, I haven't really got much choice. He's twisting my arm around his back. He's making me love him. He's making me follow him. So they'd all end up going to heaven. So that isn't the sign of a God that's not benevolent. Surely, if God was benevolent, he'd make it absolutely known without a shadow of a doubt that he existed, and that may well be through interfering with us, and it not in a sexual sense, of course, and it may well be that he would force us to love him and follow him, and he'd do that for our own good because he doesn't want to see anybody have to go to hell. He wants us all to go to heaven. So I'm just throwing that straight back at you, Gary. But as I said at the beginning of this answer, by rights, you shouldn't be asking that question because you said it yourself in your first question. If God's unfathomable, why are we judging him by our standards? Well, that's just what you've done. Okay, well, thank you for your video response, Gary, and thank you for your questions, as always, because you've made video responses to me in the past very welcome. And it's about time that I actually made a response back to you, so that's what I'm doing now. I hope you didn't mind the bit of fun I had at the beginning of the video. I hope everybody's enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching this video. Bye for now. I find no shame. Oh, fuck. Mad for it! Bloody Glazers, I fucking hate them.